I'm Adam.
And I'm Bubbles.
And this is Where There's a Williams, There's a Way. Hey, Bubbles.
Hey Adam, did you hear about the new twins in town?
No, I haven't. Are they famous or something?
Well, they're not exactly famous, but they are causing quite a stir.
What's so special about them?
They are not your ordinary twins. One of them is an expert in mathematics, and the other is a world-renowned chef.
Really? That's quite the combination. What do they do for fun?
You won't believe it. They have this hilarious hobby where they dress up as each other and confuse everyone around them.
That sounds like a riot. How do people react?
It's priceless. The mathematician twin tries to cook, and the chef twin attempts to solve complex equations. Chaos ensues.
I can only imagine the comedy of errors that must unfold.
And get this, they've even started a YouTube channel documenting their misadventures. It's called The Twisted Twins, Math Mayhem and Culinary Catastrophes.
I need to check that out. Thanks for the heads up, Bubbles. When old Mr. Haktak digs up a curious brass pot in his garden, he has no idea what use it can be. Let's get started. Two of Everything, a Chinese Folktale, retold and illustrated by Lily Toy Hong. Once, long ago, in a humble little hut, lived Mr. Haktak and his wife, Mrs. Haktak. They were old and very poor. What little they ate came from their tiny garden. In a lucky year, when the harvest was plentiful, Mr. Haktak had a little extra to take to the village. There he traded turnips, potatoes, and other vegetables for clothing, lamp oil, and fresh seeds. One spring morning when Mr. Haktak was digging in his garden, his shovel struck something hard. Puzzled, he dug deeper into the dark ground until he came upon an ancient pot made of brass. "How odd," said Mr. Haktak to himself. "To think I have been digging here all these years and never come upon this pot before. I will take it home. Maybe Mrs. Haktak will find some use for it." The pot was big and heavy for old Mr. Haktak. As he stumbled along, his purse, which contained his last 5 gold coins, fell to the ground. He tossed it into the pot for safekeeping and staggered home. His wife greeted him at the door. "Dear husband, what a strange pot!" Mr. Haktak explained how he found the pot. "I wonder what we can do with it," said Mrs. Haktak. "It looks too large to cook in and too small to bathe in." As Mrs. Haktak leaned over to peer into the pot, her hairpin, the only one she owned, fell in. She felt around in the pot, and suddenly her eyes grew round with surprise. "Look," she shouted, "I've pulled out 2 hairpins, exactly alike, and 2 purses too." Sure enough, the purses were identical, and so were the hairpins. Inside each purse were 5 gold coins. If you could double anything you want, what would you do it for?
Oh, the possibilities. I could double my peanut stash.
Or double your size. You'd be the biggest elephant in Australia.
Whoa, hold your horses, Adam. I like bird watching, not bird squishing. But hey, you could double your students. Imagine the chaos.
Oh dear, that's a classroom I don't think I'm prepared to handle.
Or double your vacation days. More time for bird watching for you and peanuts for me.
Now you're talking. Let's just hope this lamp doesn't come with any unexpected consequences. I don't want to end up with a classroom of elephant-sized kids.
Let's stick to doubling the fun, not the trouble.
Mr. Haktak was so excited he jumped up and down. "Let's put my winter coat inside the pot. If we are lucky again, the pot will make 2 coats, and then we will both stay warm." So into the pot went 1 coat, and out came 2 coats. They began to search for the house and quickly put more things into the magical pot. "If only we had some meat," wished Mr. Haktak, "or fresh fruit, or 1 delicious sweet cake." Mrs. Haktak smiled. "I know how we can get anything we want," she said. She put their 10 coins into 1 purse and threw it into the pot. She pulled out 2 purses and 10 coins in each. "What a clever wife I have," cried Mr. Haktak. "Each time we do this, we will have twice as much money as before." The Haktaks worked late into the night, filling and emptying the pot until the floor was covered with coins. Morning came and off went Mr. Haktak with a long list of things to buy at the village. Instead of vegetables, his basket was full of gold coins. Mrs. Haktak finished all of her chores and sat down to enjoy a cup of tea. She sipped her tea and admired the brass pot, and with a grateful heart she knelt and embraced it. "Dear pot, I do not know where you came from, but you are my best friend." She stooped over the pot to look inside. At that very moment, Mr. Haktak returned. His arms were so full of packages that he had to kick the door open. Bang! Mrs. Haktak was so startled that she lost her balance and fell headfirst into the pot. Mr. Haktak ran over and grabbed his wife's legs. He pulled and tugged until she slid out onto the floor. And when he looked to the pot again, he gasped. 2 more legs were sticking straight out of it. Naturally, he took a hold of the ankles and pulled. Out came a second person. She looked exactly like his wife. The new Mrs. Haktak sat silently on the floor looking lost. But the first Mrs. Haktak cried, "I am your one and only wife. Put that woman back into the pot right now." Mr. Haktak yelled, "No, if I put her back, there will not have 2 women but 3. 1 wife is enough for me." He backed away from his angry wife and tripped and fell headfirst into the pot himself. Imagine if there were 2 of me, double the fun, double the chaos.
2 Adams running around. That sounds like a recipe for disaster.
Hey now, don't underestimate the power of education times 2. But imagine if there were 2 of you too, Bubbles. You could have a fellow elephant birdwatcher.
Oh, the thought of another me tramping around with binoculars is both thrilling and terrifying. We might end up in a bird-watching showdown, competing for the best spotting spots.
That would be a sight to behold. 2 giant elephants squabbling over who saw the rarest bird first. The birdwatching community would never be the same.
Can you imagine the chaos if there were 2 of me squawking about the birds?
You make a good point, Bubbles. 1 Bubbles is plenty, and 1 Adam might be pushing it too. Let's leave the cloning experiments to the scientists and stick to our one-of-a-kind selves.
Agreed. Now, shall we go watch some birds and leave the cloning to the professionals?
Absolutely. But if I ever do get cloned, I'll make sure the second Adam knows his place right next to me, teaching the wonders of the world to kids.
And I'll make sure the second Bubbles knows the best bird-watching spots are mine.
Both Mrs. Haktaks rushed to rescue him. Each grasped an ankle, and together they pulled him out. There were 2 more legs in the pot, so they pulled out the other Mr. Haktak too. "Just what use does one Mr. Haktak have for another?" Mr. Haktak cried angrily. "This pot is not as wonderful as we thought it to be. Now even our troubles are beginning to double." But his wife had been thinking while he was yelling. "Calm down," she said. "It is good that the other Mrs. Haktak has her own Mr. Haktak. Perhaps we will become best of friends. After all, we are so alike. We will be a brother to you, and she will be a sister to me. With our pot, we can make 2 of everything, so there will be plenty to go around." And that is what they did. The Haktaks built 2 fine new homes. Each house had identical teapots, rice bowls, silk embroideries, and bamboo furniture. From the outside, the houses looked exactly alike, but there was one difference. Hidden in one of the houses was a big brass pot. Of course, the Haktaks were always very careful not to fall into it again. The new Haktaks and the old Haktaks did become good friends. The neighbors thought that the Haktaks had grown so rich that they decided to have 2 of everything, even themselves. Hey Bubbles, guess what? I spotted a rare rainbow lorikeet today while birdwatching.
No way, Adam. That's fantastic. Did you manage to snap a photo?
Nah, it flew away too quickly. But it reminded me of the time we tried to photograph that elusive cassowary in the rainforest.
How could I forget? We ended up running in circles, and you tripped over that fallen log.
Yeah, and you had to help me up. We were a sight to behold.
Just think, in a few years, we'll be trading in our birding binoculars for reading glasses.
And instead of trekking through forests, we'll be strolling through retirement communities, arguing about whose turn it is to feed the ducks.
Sounds like a plan. But no matter how old we get, we'll always be young at heart, right?
You know, neither one of us is really that old.
Sometimes I feel like it.
I like to think that we're getting wiser. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. I'm Adam.
And I'm Bubbles.
And this is Where There's a Williams, There's a Wade. Did you know 2 is the only number that is both a prime number and a highly composite number?